No wife, no kids, no future, my brother's family declared at Christmas, seizing my savings. Just a total disgrace. They all nodded. I smirked and left. 3 days later, my voicemail was full of their frantic pleas. The city lights of Chicago glittered like stars against the inky night sky, casting a festive glow over the snow-dusted streets. I, Jason, had always been the odd one out, the black sheep of my family, with a life that diverged from the well-trodden path of success they all followed. Tonight, as I approached my brother Mark's perfectly decorated suburban home, I felt the familiar weight of their judgment. But this time, I carried a secret, a deal that could change everything. Would tonight be the night I finally turned the tables on their expectations, or would I remain the family's perennial disappointment? The city of Chicago was alive with the pulse of holiday cheer, its streets a labyrinth of twinkling lights and the distant echo of carols. I, Jason, a 38-year-old man with a life less ordinary, navigated through this festive maze. My apartment, modest and solitary, stood in stark contrast to the vibrant chaos outside. I had always been the black sheep, the one who danced to the beat of his own drum. My brother Mark, on the other hand, was the golden child, the embodiment of success. His life was a meticulously crafted tapestry of achievements, each thread woven with the threads of societal expectation. As I approached Mark's house, the embodiment of suburban perfection, I could hear the laughter spilling out into the cold night. The house was a beacon of light, adorned with decorations that screamed, "Look at us, we're perfect." I hesitated at the doorstep, my hand hovering over the bell, knowing well the judgment that awaited me on the other side. The door swung open, and there they were, the picture of familial bliss. Mark with his arm around Sarah, their kids, Lily and Jake, darting around like excited puppies. Even the in-laws, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, were there, their smiles as tight as their grip on propriety. "Jason." "Finally," Mark said, his voice a mix of warmth and a hint of disappointment. The room quieted as I stepped in, the air thick with the scent of pine and the unspoken critique of my life choices. "Still no wife, no kids, huh?" Mr. Thompson's voice cut through the silence, his words dripping with condescension. "What's the plan, Jason? When are you going to settle down?" I shrugged off my coat, feeling the weight of their expectations like a physical burden. "I'm working on it," I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the turmoil inside. The conversation shifted to my savings, or what was left of them after they had convinced me to invest in some family venture. Just a total disgrace. They all nodded in agreement, their voices a chorus of disapproval. I smirked, the sting of their words mingling with the thrill of a secret I held close. They didn't know about the deal I had just closed, the one that could change everything. As the evening wore on, the jibes continued, each one a reminder of my supposed failures. But amidst the laughter and the clinking of glasses, I felt an undercurrent of something else. It wasn't just judgment, it was fear. Fear that perhaps, just perhaps, I might prove them all wrong. The warmth of the fireplace did little to thaw the cold reception I received, but I stood there, absorbing it all. They didn't see the fire in my eyes, the determination that had been forged in the solitude of my modest apartment. What could possibly change their tune? I wondered as I watched them, their perfect lives on display. The answer was simple yet hidden, like a card. Up the day after Christmas, I found myself alone in my apartment, the echo of their words still ringing in my ears. I had always been the black sheep, the one who chose the road less traveled. My career as a freelance tech consultant had been lucrative but unpredictable, a fact they never failed to remind me of. However, what they didn't know was that I had recently invested a significant portion of my savings into a startup, a risky move that could either make or break me. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the room. I sat at my desk, the glow of my computer screen illuminating my face as I scrolled through my emails, looking for any updates from the startup. My phone was unusually quiet, which was both a relief and a source of anxiety. No news could mean anything, and in the world of startups, silence was often deafening. Feeling the walls close in, I decided to take a walk in the snow. The cold air bit at my cheeks, a sharp contrast to the warmth of my apartment. As I walked, my boots crunching on the fresh snow, I thought about my family, their expectations, and the life I had chosen. The streets were quiet, the holiday cheer having dissipated into the quiet of the day after. My mind wandered to the previous night, to Mark's house, where the laughter and the clinking of glasses had been a stark reminder of my solitude. I could still hear Mr. Thompson's voice, dripping with condescension, asking when I would settle down, as if my life was a puzzle they could solve for me. I smirked, remembering the thrill of my secret. They didn't know about the deal I had just closed, the one that could change everything. It was a gamble, a high-stakes poker game where I had pushed all my chips to the center of the table. Would my gamble pay off, or would I remain the family's laughingstock? The question lingered in the air, as tangible as the snowflakes that danced around me. I thought about the startup, the potential it held, and the risk I had taken. It wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could succeed on my own terms. As I walked, I passed by a group of carolers, their voices rising in harmony, a reminder of the community I often felt detached from. Their song, a melody of hope and togetherness, struck a chord within me. It wasn't just about the money or the success. It was about finding my place in this world, a place where I could be more than just the black sheep. The cold was seeping into my bones now, urging me back towards the warmth of my apartment. I turned back, my steps heavy with the weight of my thoughts. The startup was my chance to rewrite my narrative, to shift from being the one who always chose the road less traveled to the one who paved a new path entirely. Back in my apartment, I shed my coat and gloves, the chill of the outside slowly. 3 days after Christmas, my phone finally broke its silence. It started with a single voicemail from Mark, his voice unusually urgent. "Jason, call me back immediately, it's important." Then came another and another, each more frantic than the last. Curiosity piqued. I called him back. "Jason, you won't believe this." Mark's voice was a mix of disbelief and excitement. "The startup you invested in, it just got acquired by a tech giant for a fortune. Your shares are worth millions now." The revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. The very investment they had mocked me for had turned into a gold mine. Suddenly, the same people who had belittled me were now calling, their voices dripping with a newfound respect and thinly veiled greed. They wanted a piece of my newfound wealth, suggesting we should reconsider the family investment they had taken from me. I sat back in my chair, the weight of their sudden change of heart heavy on my mind. How would I respond to this? The phone rang again. This time it was Sarah, Mark's wife. Her tone was sweet, almost too sweet, like syrup poured over a bitter truth. "Jason, darling, we were just thinking, maybe we could talk about that investment. Again? You know, for the family's future." I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, calculating how much they could siphon off my success. My fingers drummed on the desk, a rhythm of contemplation. "Sarah," I began, my voice calm but firm. "I appreciate the call, but I think I'll hold on to my shares for now. I've got plans for them." There was a pause, a silence filled with the unspoken disappointment of dashed hopes. "Of course, Jason," she replied, her voice now a shade cooler. "We just want what's best for everyone." The calls kept coming. Mr. Thompson, with his usual condescension now laced with a desperate edge, suggested a family meeting to discuss our collective future. My cousins, who had previously ignored my existence, now texted, asking if I was free for coffee or lunch, their messages filled with emojis and exclamation marks, a stark contrast to their earlier indifference. Each call, each message was a reminder of their hypocrisy. They had judged me, mocked my choices, and now they wanted to share in the fruits of my risk-taking. I felt a surge of vindication, but also a pang of sadness. Was this what success did to people? Turned them into opportunists, ready to overlook past slights for a slice of the pie? I decided to take a walk, needing space to think. The city was still adorned with remnants of holiday decorations, but the festive spirit had waned, leaving behind a quiet, reflective atmosphere. As I walked, I pondered my response. I could play their game, offer them a token share to keep the peace, or I could stand my ground, use my newfound wealth to forge my own path, free from their expectations and judgments. The thought of the latter was liberating, yet I knew it would also mean severing ties, at least temporarily, with the only family I had. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mark. "Jason, I know things have been complicated between us, but I want you to know, I'm genuinely happy for you. Maybe we can talk, just us, about what this means for you." His voice was sincere, a stark contrast to the others. I stopped walking, the cold air biting at my cheeks as I considered his words. Maybe there was a way to navigate this without burning bridges, to use this moment not just for personal gain, but for something more meaningful. I called him back, my decision made. "Mark, let's meet. I think it's time we had a real conversation about family, about what this wealth could do for us, but also for others. I'm not just looking to line my pockets. I want to make a difference." His response was a relieved sigh, followed by a promise to meet soon. As I hung up, I felt a shift within me. This wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above there. The next day, I arranged to meet Mark at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown. The atmosphere was tense as I walked in, seeing Mark, Sarah, and Mr. Thompson waiting. Their faces were a mix of anticipation and anxiety. Mark started with an awkward smile. "Jason, we've been thinking, maybe we were too harsh. We should have supported your ventures from the start." I listened, my mind racing. Here they were, the same people who had dismissed my life choices, now trying to cozy up to me for financial gain. I felt a mix of vindication and disgust. "We think it's only fair that we share in your success," Mr. Thompson added, his tone suggesting. It was more a demand than a suggestion. I took a deep breath, the weight of their expectations and their sudden change of heart pressing down on me. "You know," I began, my voice steady, "I've been thinking a lot about what success means. It's not just about the money, it's about integrity, about standing by your decisions, even when they're unpopular." Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Jason, we understand that, but think about the family. We could do so much with a little help from you." I looked at him, then at Sarah, whose eyes were fixed on me with a hopeful, almost desperate look. "I've made my decision," I said, the words feeling like both a shield and a sword. "I'm going to use this wealth to make a difference, not just for me, but for others. I've been looking into charities, educational programs, and startups that need a boost to innovate, to change lives." There was a palpable silence, the air thick with their unspoken disappointment. Sarah's expression hardened slightly, her voice softening. "Jason, we just thought—" "I know what you thought," I interrupted, not unkindly. "You thought I'd share my fortune because I owe you something. But here's the thing. I owe it to myself, to make choices that reflect who I am, not who you want me to be." Mr. Thompson leaned forward, his face a mask of concern, but his eyes betrayed a hint of calculation. "Jason, we're family. We should stick together, support each other." I nodded, acknowledging his words. "And I agree. Family should support each other. But support isn't just about money. It's about understanding, respect, and encouragement. Where was that when I was struggling, when I was taking risks you all deemed foolish?" The cafe's background noise seemed to fade as I spoke, the clinking of cups and the murmur of other patrons becoming a distant hum. "I'm not here to punish or to gloat. I'm here to set boundaries. I'll help where I can, but on my terms. I'm starting a foundation, and I'll need advisors, people who believe in my vision, not just in the wealth it brings." Mark's face softened, a flicker of genuine respect passing through his eyes. "Jason, I'm sorry. I see now how we've been. Maybe we can start anew. Not just for the money, but for us, as brothers." I looked at him, the years of rivalry and misunderstanding hanging between us like a heavy curtain. "I'd like that, Mark. But it starts with trust, with you understanding that my path, though different, isn't less valid. Sarah reached out, her hand resting briefly on mine. We've been blind, Jason. Maybe it's time we open our eyes. The meeting ended with a tentative agreement, a promise to explore new ways of being family, of supporting each other beyond financial transactions. As I left the cafe, the cold air felt less biting, the weight of their expectations lighter. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time, I felt I was walking it with a clearer sense of purpose, not just for myself, but for the legacy I wanted to leave behind. I took a deep breath, looking at each of them in turn. You know, I began, my voice steady, I've learned a lot from this experience. Not just about business, but about family. I paused, letting the tension build. I've decided to donate a significant portion of my earnings to charity, specifically to programs that support single entrepreneurs, people like me who are often overlooked. The room went silent. Mark's face fell. Sarah looked away, and Mr. Thompson's expression hardened. But Jason, we're family, Mark protested weakly. Yes, we are, I replied. And family should support each other, not just when it's convenient or profitable. I stood up, leaving them with their thoughts. The fallout of my decision was immediate and palpable. As I walked away from the cafe, the cold Chicago wind seemed to echo the chill that had settled between us. I could feel their eyes on my back, a mixture of disappointment, confusion, and perhaps a hint of respect. I knew this choice would redefine our relationships. Mark, who had always seen me as the wayward brother, might now see me in a new light. Not just as a source of potential wealth, but as someone with principles. Sarah, who had always been the peacemaker, might now question her own motives in our interactions. And Mr. Thompson, with his old-school views on family and success, would likely view this as a betrayal of sorts, a departure from the script he had written for us. As I made my way back to my apartment, my phone buzzed incessantly. Texts and calls from family members, some pleading, others angry, all demanding I reconsider. But I knew I had made the right choice. This wasn't about punishing them. It was about setting a precedent for how I wanted to live my life, how I wanted to be remembered. In the solitude of my apartment, I sat down at my desk, the glow of my computer screen reflecting in my eyes. I began drafting the details of my foundation. It would focus on providing not just financial aid, but mentorship, resources, and a network for those who dared to dream differently, just as I had. The next few days were a whirlwind. I met with lawyers to set up the legal framework for the foundation, spoke with potential partners, and even received calls from other entrepreneurs who had heard about my decision. Their stories, their struggles, resonated with me, reinforcing my resolve. But amidst the flurry of activity, there was a quiet moment when Mark called. His voice was different this time, not laced with the usual undercurrent of rivalry or condescension. "Jason," he said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. Maybe we've been looking at success all wrong." I listened, the weight of years of misunderstanding slowly lifting. "I'm not saying we should forget the past, Mark, but maybe we can build something new from here. Not just for us, but for others who need a chance." He agreed, and we decided to meet again, this time with a different agenda. Not to discuss money or investments, but to genuinely understand each other, to rebuild the bridge that had been so strained. The meeting was different. There was less tension, more openness. We talked about our childhood, our dreams, and the paths we had chosen. Mark admitted his envy, his fear that I might outshine him in ways he hadn't anticipated. I shared my feelings of isolation, of being the black sheep not by choice, but by circumstance. As we spoke, I realized that this wasn't just about my success or my wealth. It was about healing, about understanding that family isn't just about sharing in the good times, but also supporting each other through the choices that define us. Leaving that meeting, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The city around me was still adorned with the remnants of holiday cheer, but now it felt like a new beginning, not just for me, but for us as a family. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with potential pitfalls and challenges, but for the first time, I felt like I wasn't walking it alone. My decision to donate my earnings was not just a statement of my values, but as I walked out of the cafe, the weight that had been pressing down on my shoulders for years seemed to lift. The cold Chicago wind felt like a fresh start, a cleansing breeze that carried away the last remnants of my family's expectations. I had made my point, not just to them, but to myself. Over the next few weeks, I followed through with my plan. I donated a large sum to various charities, focusing on those that supported single entrepreneurs and innovative startups. I kept enough for a comfortable life, but not the lavish one they had envisioned for me. It was about finding balance, about living true to my values rather than their vision of success. The calls from my family dwindled, replaced by a newfound respect from afar. They had seen me stand firm, not just in my financial decisions, but in my integrity. Mark, in particular, seemed to understand this shift. Our relationship, once strained by rivalry and misunderstanding, began to heal. We reconciled, but on new terms, where respect was mutual and not contingent on wealth or status. I remember the day Mark called, his voice devoid of the usual competitive edge. "Jason," he said, "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. Maybe we've been looking at success all wrong." We met again, not to discuss money or investments, but to genuinely understand each other. We talked about our childhood, our dreams, and the paths we had chosen. Mark admitted his envy, his fear that I might outshine him in ways he hadn't anticipated. I shared my feelings of isolation, of being the black sheep, not by choice but by circumstance. As we spoke, I realized that this wasn't just about my success or my wealth. It was about healing, about understanding that family isn't just about sharing in the good times, but also supporting each other through the choices that define us. Leaving that meeting, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. The city around me was still adorned with the remnants of holiday cheer, but now it felt like a new beginning, not just for me, but for us as a family. My life continued, not as the family's disgrace, but as a man who had found his own path. I was no longer the black sheep, but someone who had redefined what success meant. It wasn't about the size of one's bank account, but the integrity of one's choices, the impact one could make, and the respect one could earn. I walked through the city, now not just navigating through its festive maze, but contributing to its vibrancy. My foundation was taking shape, offering not just financial aid, but mentorship, resources, and a network for those who dared to dream differently, just as I had. The calls from my family, once filled with demands and expectations, now carried a tone of curiosity and genuine interest in what I was building. They began to see me not as a source of potential wealth, but as someone with principles, someone who could inspire change. As I looked around at the city, the twinkling lights seemed brighter, the carols sweeter, and the community more welcoming. I was no longer on the outside looking in. I was part of something larger, something meaningful. Would this be the end of my story, or just the beginning of a new chapter? The question lingered in the air, as tangible as the snowflakes that danced around me, but for now I was content. I had proven to myself that I could succeed on my own terms, that I could make a difference, and that family could be about more than just blood. It could be about shared values, mutual respect, and the courage to support each other's unique journeys. As I walked back to my apartment, the cold didn't seem to bite as sharply. Instead, it felt like the crisp air of a new dawn, signaling the start of a journey not just for me, but for all of us, as we learn to redefine success, family, and the legacy we would leave behind. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. If you enjoyed this story, this will help us create more engaging stories for you.